Like many other parts of the Middle East and some dry regions in the world, Iran is currently facing a state of water bankruptcy. Now, this year's serious drought in Iran has come after 2 extremely wet years that had caused a lot of flood damages across the country, filled up the empty reservoirs, gave birth to the dried up wetlands, and recharge the aquifers. But the wet season also created a perception of water availability increase and caused miscalculations on the manager's side when it came to the time of decision making about water allocation. They thought they had more water available and more water incoming in the spring and summer into their system, but that never happened. So as the result, we have a situation that reservoirs are empty. They cannot provide water to the farmers, industries, and urban and rural users for domestic water supply. Wetlands are empty, and the ecosystem dependent on the wetlands are suffering. Different animals are endangered, and even Iran is facing issues when it comes to hydropower generation and meeting the increasing electricity demand that because of the increasing temperature and because of the current warm summer. A lot of media around the world covered the incidents in Khuzestan, a province in southwest Iran, where lots of protests happened recently. A lot of water users were mad at the government for not satisfying their water rights, and unfortunately these protests were quite deadly. Innocent people got killed asking for their rights to be respected and asking for environmental justice. Khuzestan is an extremely rich province, relatively speaking, when we compare it with the rest of the provinces in Iran. When it comes to the oil and gas resources, it's one of the richest places on the planet Earth. But when it comes to natural resources in Iran, it's also very rich. It has the longest river and the only navigable river in Iran that has been overdammed. Lots of reservoirs have been built on the Karun River in Iran for different uses, for different water uses, as well as hydropower production. The Khuzestan province has many industries, and it has a lot of agricultural activities that produce a lot of food used by the Iranian population across Iran. This province also has some major wetlands and ecosystems that are quite valuable in Iran, and when these wetlands dry up, not only the ecosystem dependent on them die, but also dust storms are created which affect the whole country, many parts of the country, and really paralyzes the people and life in Khuzestan. For years, Khuzestan have had many water problems. Lots of villages have not had access to clean water. Lots of cities were not receiving very clean water through the urban network. They had to install water filters at home and small treatment equipment to purify water and improve the quality of water. So these problems are not necessarily new to Khuzestan. There is another element which was important in these protests, and that was environmental injustice. People were mad because of environmental injustice, believing that when the Khuzestan province is so rich, it deserves better treatment, even development. They were mad at Khuzestan's revenues being allocated to other regions in Iran, as well as its water that has been transferred to other regions. So there are places in Khuzestan that have no access to water, and there are places in the dry parts of Iran, in central Iran, which are benefiting from the water that has been transferred from the Karun River tributaries or Karkhe River tributaries that are causing discomfort and the feeling of environmental injustice. While the Khuzestan's water issues got a lot of coverage, we pretty much see the same problems across the country, declining aquifer levels, drying wetlands and rivers, and the farmers, domestic water users, industrial water users who are left without water, and the environment which it does not have the ability and the political capacity to take water from humans and reclaim its water rights. So we have seen problems in other regions. The water transfers not only have affected the donor basins like Khuzestan, but also the recipient basins, like the famous province of Isfahan. The famous Zayanderud River passing through the former capital of Iran, Isfahan, is currently dry, and the farmers there are also suffering and expressing anger. As the result of these bad decisions, also some clashes have been created between different ethnic groups and people from different regions who are concerned about environmental injustice, who are concerned about the problems affecting them in different ways, who are concerned about the lack of transparency in water allocations, and who are concerned about their future and their livelihood. When the livelihood of people is threatened, they express their anger. They can come to street. You can see increased tensions, conflicts between different regions, increased migration, marginalization of different societies. And as we know, it's the poor who are affected mostly and would suffer from these problems. Now, people ask if climate change has played any role here. Of course it has. Climate change increases the temperature and limits water availability in Iran and the rest of the Middle East because of reduced precipitation over time. We also see an increase in the frequency and intensity of extreme events like the floods we saw in the past 2 years and the droughts that we are seeing today. So these things affect the water budget of the country. They also affect the amount of water use and water demand, because increased temperature means increased evaporation and increased evapotranspiration, meaning that crops would require more water. Increased temperature also means that citizens need more electricity for cooling, which means more water is needed in the energy sector for power production. So all these things affect both the supply and the demand side. But the major question to ask here is whether climate change was the major cause of this problem, or the sole cause of this problem, or it functioned as a catalyst. The primary cause of water bankruptcy in Iran is not climate change, but decades of bad management, lack of foresight, poor environmental governance, and unsustainable and uneven development. Yes, climate change has played a role as a catalyst. It has exacerbated the situation like some other variables, such as bad economy, high inflation, and corruption. By blaming everything on climate change, we are reducing a complex problem and giving a gift to the decision makers who do not want to be liable for the bad decisions they have made over the years. We have to distinguish between the causes and catalysts when it comes to analyzing environmental and water problems, and prevent reductionist thinking when we want to have a better understanding and provide solutions to these problems. We also need the analysts, journalists, and scientists to be more responsible when it comes to storytelling about the Middle East and dry areas of the world. It is easy to climatize every event for a good cause, because we want to get attention to problems like climate change. But if we do that, then we will manipulate this story. Then our solutions would not be realistic and practical and even useful for the problems. We have to understand and appreciate the complexities there. We have to understand what the accumulation of problems over the years mean and how these problems have been created over time. If we don't understand these complexities, not only we won't be helpful, but also we may exacerbate the problems there because of our misguidance.